All right. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us this Thursday morning here. My name is Dr. Chudley Wirch. I'm president and founder of Prevention Plus Wellness, LLC, located here in beautiful Jacksonville, Florida. I look out my window and it's sort of overcast today, so it's not a, it's not a typical day. I hope it's nice where you are joining from. We have a full session. So there's some real interest in this topic, which is great. I will do my best to offer something that you can take away to use back in your settings for your youth and families in your region. So we've got people signed up from throughout the country. So thank you again for joining us, especially those people on the West Coast or abroad that may be tuning in an early morning hour. So God bless you all for being here, what you do with youth and families in your communities. So I am recording this session. I think it'll last longer than 30 minutes. I said 30 minutes. I think maybe give or take 10 minutes or so. I think it may run actually a little longer. I've added some extra slides to this. So do stay with us if you can. At the end of today's session, we will have Q&A. So as we go along, if you have questions, you're welcome to type in your questions or comments as we go along, or you can wait to the end if you want, and I'm happy to stay as long as you have any questions and want to discuss this topic of youth leadership training and evidence-based prevention plus wellness. At the end of today's session, I'll send you a link to this recorded webinar that you could share with others in your region, which I would really hope that you do throughout your region, state, even your nation, wherever you're calling in from. And I'll also send you a PDF of the slides and a certificate for 30, 45 minutes, whatever time we spend here today for your CEU credit. So there are 5 objectives for today's training. A lot of objectives for such a short training, but nonetheless, here they are. Number 1, you should be able to identify approaches and benefits of involving youth in providing substance use prevention to their same age or younger age peers. That's objective number 1. Number 2 is you will be able to list the advantages of using prevention plus wellness programs in youth leadership training. Number 3, you should be able to describe evidence-based and evidence-informed prevention plus wellness programs which are ideal for youth leadership training. Number 4, explain settings, populations, roles, as well as objectives of youth leadership training in prevention plus wellness. And lastly, explore training options and program materials that are available for youth leadership training in prevention plus wellness. So to start out, there is some relatively broad support for youth leadership in substance use prevention from some major organizations. So for example, from SAMHSA, Substance Use Mental Health Services Administration, you see that they have on a website that they're focusing on youth leadership in terms of benefits of engagement and resiliency. Also, we see CATCA having some content about empowering youth to be change agents in their communities through youth leadership training. And then while this document is a little old, 2003, still it highlights the fact that, that there's an international focus on this through the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, where they publish a document about using peer-to-peer strategies for drug abuse prevention. So there's some major organizations, national and international organizations, and if you just Google or search on any search engine for peer leadership, peer-led interventions, you'll see that throughout the country and abroad, there is a focus on training youth for the purposes of preventing substance use in their areas, their regions, their states, and so forth. One way to look at this is there are two approaches of involving youth in substance use prevention. The first and most common, I believe, is providing youth with a substance use evidence-based program, or EBP. Again, I think this is the most common approach used, where young people, most common strategy used, where young people receive an evidence-based program. It's critical to preventing substance use as well as promoting wellness. In this particular situation where youth receives an evidence-based program, the youth plays a relatively limited and usually mostly a passive role, where they receive the prevention content. Then the second approach, number two, is to train youth as peer leaders to implement substance use evidence-based programs to others. This is where youth assumes more responsibility, obviously, a more active role than just receiving the content. And in some cases, this is where young people can receive an evidence-based program and then turn around and provide this prevention content to their peers. So you can see it could be a very powerful, and is a very powerful strategy. There's a number of research reviews that support peer-led interventions for substance use prevention. These are four of the more recent ones, two in 2016 and two in 2017. These are reviews of research, so they're summarizing a number of studies. So if you take a look at number one, for example, there was a review back in 2016 that concluded that peer-led interventions may be effective in preventing tobacco, alcohol, and possibly cannabis use among youth. Number two, second review of research in 2016 concluded that there's promising international evidence for peer facilitators to improve adolescent mental health and to reduce substance use and violence. Then in 2017, under number three, there was a review of research showing that group peer educators commonly improved knowledge, attitudes, and beliefs, while one-on-one support from peers actually influenced behavior change. And then the last review under number four concluded that peer-led social influence interventions appear effective in preventing adolescent substance use. So a number of reviews of studies showing that there is evidence of the effectiveness of using peers to provide interventions to prevent substance use. There's a number of benefits of youth providing substance use, particularly evidence-based practices. These are some of the ones that came to my mind very quickly. Becoming a positive role model, which is very essential to changing those individuals that have to become role models. Experiencing providing meaningful service, learning professional responsibilities, such as planning and implementing interventions, gaining personal as well as leadership skills, knowledge, and confidence, learning about evidence-based practices and evidence-based programs, gaining program implementation and evaluation skills, being introduced to prevention and wellness professions, and hands-on learning and service experience. So a number of really important benefits for youth to participate in providing substance use, particularly evidence-based practices. Who should participate in youth leadership training of this type? In the far left, certainly the most common, I think, approach that I've seen is for volunteers, volunteer peer mentors and leaders. On the far right, I do also see that sometimes high-risk youth and young adults can be targeted, and that makes perfect sense because these are very powerful interventions where youth receive the intervention and then turn around and are trained as leaders and role models to provide it to others. But also, I think in the center, I think youth can I think general youth populations can be trained, and I don't believe this has been done all that much, but I think general youth populations can be trained in youth leadership in terms of providing substance use prevention. So everybody, all youth can participate in this. Now, there are certainly some barriers that come to mind to using typical evidence-based programs in youth leadership training. The main one is that your common evidence-based practice or program is too complex, multi-session, the training is too lengthy. And so what you have here is the training for implementation is just too lengthy. Sometimes these trainings go not just for a full day, but several days. And that becomes a barrier to training youth leaders. Programs are not likely to be implemented, especially if they're multi-session. So let's say you have an evidence-based program that's 5 or 6 sessions, let alone 10 or 15 or more sessions. Peers are not going to be able to feasibly implement that type of an evidence-based practice. And if it's too complex, if it requires too much prior training and experience, counseling, education, whatever, that also is going to be a significant barrier for youth leadership training. So that's why there's a certain number of advantages of prevention plus wellness programs for youth leadership training. Number one, prevention plus wellness programs are only a single session, and they're scripted interventions. So these can be implemented, these prevention plus wellness programs can be implemented one-on-one or group, another plus, gives that kind of flexibility. That they also address a number of substances, so there can be some focus on different substances depending on the needs of youth leadership training or youth population in that area. Alcohol, tobacco, cannabis, vaping, e-cigarettes, and opioids are all various topics that are addressed by prevention plus wellness programs. At the same time, prevention plus wellness programs address chronic disease risk, or if you look at the other side of that coin, wellness behaviors, particularly physical activity, nutrition, sleep, and stress. All of these are a plus, I think, for training in youth leadership types of training, because it increases interest and options for young people. Number 5, youth learn theory, research, and practice of screening and brief interventions as a prevention strategy. Number 6, all prevention plus wellness programs include a built-in evaluation system so the youth can actually evaluate how effective their programs are. And lastly, PPW programs or prevention plus wellness programs give options for both evidence-based and evidence-informed. But if I could go back to number 1, first of all, I think the number 1 option, the number 1 benefit of prevention plus wellness programs are, first, they're a single session, so they become practical. The training is very brief. It's only a couple hours in length, live training. And then thirdly, the scripted intervention makes them much more realistic and feasible for youth and easier for them to implement without having some prior education or counseling experience. Now, some of you already know about prevention plus wellness programs, so I won't spend a lot of time on this, but there's 2 evidence-based programs we offer that can be included in youth leadership training. The first is Sport Prevention Plus Wellness, evidence-based, proven to prevent alcohol, tobacco, cannabis use, and increase physical activity among non-using and substance-using youth. It targets physical activity, healthy eating, sleep, and stress control. It's a single session, I'd say about 40-45 minutes in length. It's a screening and brief intervention. And there's versions of sport that can be implemented in the high school, middle school, or elementary school. So you can see some options there for youth leaders. A youth leader, for example, in high school, junior, senior, could be trained to implement this to their younger freshman, sophomore, but then also to even middle school or elementary school children, as an example. The sport program is implemented with slides, so you got your PowerPoint slides. You have your script in hand, so you can follow the script. You got PowerPoint slides and script, making it very easy for you to provide this. This is based on a marketing theory that emphasizes positive images and positive behaviors. It also includes, the sport also includes optional parent materials, parent letter, and 4 weekly flyers. So youth could be trained to provide that as well. They could be involved in mailing out, handing out, emailing, placing on a website. So there's some parent materials as well in the sport program. And a digital download allows the youth leaders to make copies for everything that they need to implement to youth, either in a group, in a classroom, or individually. By the same token, the parallel program to sport is In Shape, Prevention Plus Wellness. This is for college students and other young adults, also evidence-based, proven to prevent alcohol, cannabis, drinking, driving, and increase physical activity, sleep, and health-related quality of life among young adults. And it's very similar to sport in that it does target physical activity, healthy nutrition, sleep, stress control, single session, screening and brief intervention, implemented in a group or one-on-one, comes with slides, comes with a script. Again, positive image. Then Prevention Plus Wellness has a number of evidence-informed programs. You can see them to the right. So if youth want to be trained in youth leadership to provide an intervention, again, screening, brief intervention, single session, they can do so because there is a vaping Prevention Plus Wellness program that addresses e-cigarettes, marijuana prevention plus wellness, opioid prevention plus wellness, as well as In God's Image, which is a faith-based program, which is great for youth ministry. The only program which is probably not as practical for youth leadership training is Sport 2, because it is 6 sessions in length, while all of our other programs are just a single session. But again, they all have the advantage of not just being brief, but also scripted, options for implementation in group or individual settings, and the training is quite brief. What are so let's just talk very briefly about the youth leadership Prevention Plus Wellness training options. Online or on site, we offer. It's practical in that at this point, it's just a single 2-hour live session with 1 hour recorded session, and then they practice on their own or with their mentors. And the focus is on developing knowledge, skills, and confidence to implement a Prevention Plus Wellness program. The cost is $4.99 for up to 50 youth and adult mentors at training, whether it be online or on site. The Youth Leadership Prevention Plus Wellness program materials include a program booklet with a script for implementation. Again, there can be an option of either one-on-one or in a group. Digital downloads of reproducible materials and PowerPoint slides. Includes a screening survey, goal plan, pre-post evaluation surveys if youth and mentors want to evaluate the success of their lesson. Process evaluation tools to keep the youth on track and assess how well they implement their program. Online resources, and the cost generally $1.99 for a set of programs for 10 youth, although we do have reduced prices for larger youth groups. What are the settings, populations, and leadership roles for providing training in Prevention Plus Wellness for youth leaders? We've seen this happen and been conducted in college settings where youth peers are trained to provide this evidence-based Prevention Plus Wellness program In Shape, in most cases in college settings, or some college students will actually provide the sport program to younger kids in their communities within schools or youth groups by providing the sport program. Schools, certainly, we have youth groups, schools, and other youth settings where young people are trained to be youth leaders, to provide within their schools, within their YMCAs or Boys and Girls Clubs, as well as faith-based settings. In terms of population and implementation, typically the same or younger age peers are the recipients. So young people are trained to provide this evidence-based program, Sport, In Shape, vaping, marijuana, opioid prevention plus wellness, In God's Image, one of those programs to their same or younger age. Leadership roles can be tailored, however, depending on the age, maturity, and ability and interest of the youth involved. So, for example, these are a number of the leadership roles that can be played under number 7. practicing implementation of the evidence-based program, program tailoring to their population or setting, planning and preparation for implementation, pilot testing of the evidence-based prevention plus wellness program. Some youth will be presenting either to a group or to individuals, data collection in terms of survey evaluation data, data analysis reporting, communicating findings, the marketing of the program, as well as making changes based on findings from the evaluation. So these are some of the varied roles, and depending again on the age, maturity, ability, and interest of youth, there are a number of roles that young people can play. Not everybody has to implement the program or make the presentation, but there's a lot of opportunities for participation in providing evidence-based programs of the prevention plus wellness nature. In terms of prevention plus wellness youth leadership training objectives, here are 6 of them. Number 1, examine evidence-based and evidence-informed prevention plus wellness programs. Number 2, list differences between typical substance use prevention programs and prevention plus wellness interventions. Number 3, explore theory and research supporting brief as well as multi-health behavior screening and brief interventions. Number 4, describe options, settings, steps, and adaptations for implementing and evaluating prevention plus wellness programs. Of course, number 5 is a core objective, and that is to develop knowledge, skills, and confidence to implement prevention plus wellness programs as an evidence-based intervention. And lastly, number 6, describe how to monitor the quality and outcomes of prevention plus wellness programs. So prevention plus wellness programs, just to give you a quick overview, is a scripted screening and brief intervention. All of them are. There's 3 steps to implementation. Step number one is to screen participants for their current health habits using a screening survey. This includes not just substance use, but also their chronic disease risk behaviors or wellness behaviors, physical activity, nutrition, sleep, even stress control. Number 2, you provide feedback to either the group or to the individual peer, and using positive image messages and using the script and your PowerPoint slides designed to increase motivation and to cue desired future images of themselves, their peers of themselves, engage in the wellness behaviors like being more physically active and fit and successful. And then thirdly, to assist participants to set and monitor goals, not just to avoid substance use, but also to increase one or more wellness behaviors. Now, we do have a video that shows trained high school youth leaders in California a couple years ago, and they demonstrate implementing a portion of the sport prevention plus wellness program to a group of younger peers. This was recorded back in 2017. It's a YouTube video. It's about 8 minutes in length, and I'm going to show you a portion of it so you get a feel of the screening, feedback, and goal setting. But before I do that, I'm going to just draw some conclusions about today's training, and then we'll go back to that sample video so you can actually see how youth have done this in the past. So in conclusion, number 1, training youth leaders in substance use prevention is supported by major substance use organizations like SAMHSA, CADCA, and the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. Secondly, research supports the effectiveness of using peers to lead or to implement substance use prevention. Thirdly, there are numerous benefits of training youth to provide substance use evidence-based practices or evidence-based programs. Number 4, unlike substance use evidence-based programs, prevention plus wellness programs and training are feasible for use in youth leadership training because of a number of reasons that we had discussed earlier: brevity, scripted options for implementation, and so on. And then lastly, prevention plus wellness programs allow various substance use and wellness behaviors to be addressed among their peers. So depending on the prevention plus wellness program, youth are able to provide and address within their schools, communities, youth groups, and so on, campuses, alcohol or cannabis or vaping, as well as wellness behaviors, as well as health promoting behaviors like physical activity, nutrition, sleep, and so forth. So let me go back then and take a look. Let's take a quick peek. I won't show the entire video. I'll let you go ahead and take a look at it yourself. But here is a YouTube video. And again, remember, I will be sending everybody a PDF of this, of these slides, so you'll be able to view this and share this with others. This is a YouTube video.
So hi guys, my name's Bailey. I'm Caitlin. And so, like Mr. Covert said, we're going to be going over the
All right, having a little technical difficulty. Let me just pause at this point. I'm switching. I think that we may have an audio problem. So let me just double check. And before I show this video, and I'm going to enhance it so you can hear it and that you can see it. I just want to make sure everybody is able to hear me at this point. So let me just double check. Can you still hear this audio? Because I've switched from these earbuds to just the open audio. You can hear me. Okay, good. So let me go ahead and I'm going to show this video of young people in California implementing a portion of the Sport Prevention Plus Wellness program. I'm going to increase my volume as loud as it'll go. And then you can take a look at it and you get a sense, I think, of how this can work in your particular setting. So there you have it. I'm going to cut that a little short. You got to see at least a little bit about how, in this case, a pair of high school students were able to implement together in tandem the sport prevention plus wellness program in a group setting. You saw a little bit about the very first portion of that, where they distributed the screening survey and let all the youth assess their current health habits. Then there was the feedback about each of those items on the screening survey, starting with physical activity, and then it went to last year, then it went to regular physical activity, and then healthy nutrition, breakfast, and sleep, and then it addressed alcohol. So that was the content and the slides, and that was in the script, and they showed the slides. And then the last portion was where they were walking them through a goal plan, which has a number of components to it, recommendations for all the healthy behaviors, pledges to avoid substance use, then identifying specific components of improving one or more of the wellness behaviors, whether it be nutrition or healthy foods or breakfast or sleep or more physical activity. And so it shows you that the youth can be trained and can implement this within a setting of, in this case, a classroom of their peers. Okay, I'm going to stop at this point and see if anybody has any questions about anything that we talked about related to today's session. I'm going to see if anybody has any questions, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.